right? At first, it may be a general, I'm going to reprogram my mind. Blessings, blessings, blessings. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Charlie's Truth YouTube channel. My name is Charlie, and I am an intuitive soul guided energy channeler. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about how I reprogram my mind. Now, this is one of my favorite things to talk about because I am just so in awe with how the brain operates and just like how we can witness it if we just pay attention um, to our thoughts, if we just pay attention to our reactions, if we pay attention to um, how we show up, if we pay attention to how other people show up, we could just learn so much. And I know that I see my brain as a computer. And with that in mind, I really believe that I have learned to understand the subconscious mind and how it operates and how we can reprogram it and program it, and also ways that we can recognize what it is we want to reprogram. And so that's a little bit about what we'll talk about today. This is how I reprogram my mind, how I work with my subconscious, how I change the way I experience life by changing my thoughts, by changing my perspective, and by changing what I'm conditioned and programmed to believe or know about the world, about myself, and about others. And so I'm really going to take you all on a journey about like why I believe this all works, what I've learned throughout this process, and then how I pretty much go about the process, how I reprogram my mind. But first, I'm going to lay down some foundational information. It is not going to be all exhaustive. I will share whatever it is that comes to my mind to share in this moment. And, we'll continue this conversation. This does not have to be a one-time conversation, but I do want to get it started. I asked Spirit what it is that I should be talking about, and it was like mindset. And I thought, wow, retraining the mind is like a perfect place to start. And I geek out about it. I geek out about this all the time. So I'm super excited. So I'm going to start out this section by talking about the subconscious mind. I think that is important to talk about the subconscious mind before I talk about conditioning because it all goes together really. And so when I'm talking about the subconscious mind, I am talking about the part of our brain or our mind.
By the way, I am not a studier of the brain.
Right? These are just things I just know from living and being me and the little education I do have, right? I do feel like a lot of, like, especially in social work school, we do talk about the brain a little bit. So I do know like a little bit about the brain, and I have also researched a little bit about the brain. But also I feel like there's something special about having a knowing, and I think that that's what I have. I have a knowing from my own experience how the brain works, and this does not mean that this will be everyone else's experience. This is just happens to be mine and how I go about things because of the way I am designed and made up, and this has worked for me. And I have been doing mindset work for many years intentionally. I want to say for the past 5 or 6 years intentionally, I've been doing mindset work. So as one can probably imagine, over time, my tools and techniques have changed. And so I'm going to share with you what I currently do and what I currently have awareness of about the process. And so that's what this is about. So to start off, the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind is the part of the brain or the mind where it operates just below our awareness, right? So when I talk about our awareness, I'm talking about this very moment, this active moment, right? With me recording, I am present, I'm aware. This is my awareness, right? It's happening right in front of me. I know what I'm saying. I know what I'm doing. This is awareness, right? Awakened consciousness. But the thing about the subconscious mind, it's the part of the mind that's operating just below that awareness. And so that subconscious mind is where like long-term thoughts are saved. This is where our beliefs are saved. This is where we tend to like as new information and experiences are coming in, we tend to find things within our subconscious, within our memory bank to connect the things, right? To make sense of it. We tend to use old information to make sense of new information that's coming in. And that tends to happen throughout a processing. And part of that processing also includes the subconscious mind. So I did want to just put a quick blurb in here about memory and the subconscious mind. I have mentioned that one of the things that the subconscious mind is responsible for is that long-term memory. And before I go further, I do want to add a quick blurb in here about what I do know or what knowledge I do have surrounding memory, both short-term and long-term. um, the reason why I believe the reprogram the mind thing works and how we can play with it and witness it is because we can think about our long-term memories. We can think about our behavior patterns and where we learn these things from and how we develop some of the values and beliefs we have. And where where they were first rooted, and a lot of times that will be back in our home life or somewhere else that was just special and wonderful and whatever to us, but that had an emotional connection for us in some way. Anywho, the whole thing I wanted to say is that the subconscious mind is responsible for that long-term memory. That's where we hold all of our memories from our childhood and everything else. And I say it's those memories and those experiences where we then draw conclusions about the world and draw conclusions about what's possible and about how we perceive the world is happening through these collection of memories and experiences that we've gathered together as our truths. And those things are more often than not, right, stored in our subconscious, stored in our ego, stored in our bodies, because our bodies also is keeping score, as the book would say, and also holding memories. Especially when we're talking about trauma and experiences that really put us in a state of shock or put us in a state of dissociation. And then we have the short term memory, right? As we talk about the idea of the subconscious mind and the way it works, we can think about how information is already within us, right? And then new information that's coming in. When that new information is coming in, it is going to our short term memory. But that short-term memory are things that, right, we are believed to be forgotten because the brain like has this limited capacity to store only but so much information. And so when we come across new information, our brain stores it first in the short-term memory, but it's only there for a brief period of time. And so if we don't use this information in some way or rehearse it, chances are it's going to be forgotten. Sometimes short-term memory can be transferred to more reliable long-term memory system if it has some type of emotional meaning, or if we take that information and be repetitive with it, right? We keep it lively, we keep activating it, we keep telling ourselves this is the truth, this is what it is, this is this, whatever the story or narrative is. When we keep repeating it, we send that information then to that long-term memory bank. But if we take in new information and we don't utilize it, we don't feed into it. This is why very often when I see people messages or comments, I don't absorb it. Like, I read it and I move on, but I don't allow it to stay festering and repeating in my mind because I don't want it to settle. I want it to move out of my short-term memory. And I witness things move out of my short-term memory usually within 2 days. So if I have an experience that did worry me or did make me a little anxious or bothersome, and if it keeps coming to my mind every once in a while, I know that if I don't feed it, eventually it will go away. And in my experience, it usually takes a day or two for that to happen. But yeah, so the short-term memory and the long-term memory and just how that works, I wanted to throw that in here before we move on. Let's continue. So our subconscious mind played a major role in how we experience life. It is constantly influencing our experience because the subconscious mind job is really it has so many jobs, honestly. But one of the things it does is I also connect it with the ego. I call it the ego, to be honest. I tend to call my subconscious the ego. And the reason why is because I do believe that part of it is to protect us, right? Like part of it is to learn the way of the world. So I don't want to get too far. So let's start at the beginning. So the subconscious mind is a part of the mind that operates below our normal level of waking consciousness, right? So this moment, this space, what's happening in the very present, everything that I'm aware of, right? It's like my awakened consciousness. Subconscious mind is playing under that level, right? So there's this awareness, but then there's this subconscious mind. This subconscious mind, while while we're being present and everything else, the subconscious mind is constantly taking in information. It's taking in sounds, it's taking in noises, it's taking in all this information and it's processing it. Okay, like it is no joke. And I don't want to get ahead of myself. I get so excited. But yes, it is constantly taking in information, um, working behind the scenes, absorbing or rejecting information based on our existing perceptions we have about the world, about ourselves, about others. And so it is taking in this information, it's either accepting it as truth or rejecting it due to whatever other perspectives we had or perceptions we have about how the world works. Um, so say for instance, something happens and like you believe that no one's a psychic, right? And then someone say, "Oh, I have a message for you," right? Like your brain may automatically tell you to ignore it, that it's not real, to laugh about it, to joke about it, right? And to just not accept it as truth, to reject it. And however you express that rejection is whatever, but you don't have an open mind about the possibility that someone can actually be a psychic because you have a belief that that's just not possible. And so because you have this deep rooted belief, right? Why am I touching the back of the head? Because you have this deep rooted belief in your subconscious, at a conscious level, when that information is coming in, your subconscious is like rejecting it, like no, 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 because you already have a belief there that that's just not possible. And that's kind of how the mind is working. So I did jot down some notes about some of the things that the subconscious mind is responsible for, and I do want to share that just to give you an idea of like what's happening in the background. So this includes habits and patterns, right? So when we recognize a habit or when we create in a habit, the thing is we're programming ourselves, right? You know, a lot of times people can just drive home without really thinking, or they can get to work without really thinking much about it, because a lot of times it has been programmed in our subconscious, and therefore it's something we don't have to really think about. We can do it on autopilot, okay? And so we got habits and patterns, automatic body functions, right? Like breathing, digestions, things like that. Creativity, emotions, right? Like, you know, emotions are triggered. They happen, like they are a response to something. They are guideposts, they are signals, they're telling us information, but they are automatic. They just happen, you know, and how we react to it is another story, but our emotions just show up, you know, there's sensation inside our body. And so, you know, that just happens, you know, and then we give wording to it like feelings or whatever else, but it is something that automatically that just happens, right? And then we got our personality. Our personality is part of our subconscious because, again, as I mentioned earlier, it is part of that programming. It is part of that habit. It is part of our habitual way of being, right? And so like it becomes us. It becomes who we say we are, how we identify, because it is behavior and patterns that we continue to show up in and as, but a lot of that is happening in our subconscious. Okay, our beliefs and values, because our subconscious have such a big part in long-term memory, our beliefs and our values are also stored there. And I think that that's such an important thing, because one thing I often say to myself, or one thing I do in this world, is I pay attention to people's behavior. I pay attention to what they talk the most about. I pay attention to how they react to things, because I have found that a lot of times I can figure out people's values by how they behave, by how they act, because to me, you're constantly expressing your values. Whether it doesn't matter what the values are, right? A person that values money might work a lot, you know, they might prioritize work. Right. And that's just a part of it, right? Because it may also be an issue about security. And so they work so much and so hard to get this money so that they never feel unsafe. You know, like there's a million things, but like what I'm getting, there are a million possibilities. But what I'm getting at is that, you know, you can learn so much about a person just by watching them, by watching their behaviors. Because according to research, we'll talk about how I feel about research in a bit, but you know, everything is usable, okay? But according to a lot of research, 90 to 95% of our brain activity is unconscious, not in our conscious awakening. A lot of that is what's happening in the background. And a big part of that, in my opinion, is what's happening in our subconscious mind. And I believe that our subconscious mind plays a big part in how we show up in the world, how we interact, what we believe, and what our experience is, and what we believe our experience to be. So to go further on that, I see the subconscious mind as it's like autopilot, right? I also see it as like computer, right? I'm no computer geek, so hopefully this is a way to explain it that resonates. But so I see my brain as a computer, and specifically I'm talking about my subconscious mind as a computer. And with that being said is I tend to feel like I'm constantly programming myself, right? So if I was a coder, I would be coding things to automatically operate, right? Like I will put this code in, and once I put this code in and get it up and running, it can continue to play out in the background. And like similar to autopilot, right? If you put the plane on autopilot and you put in a location, the plane is going to go to that location until you reprogram it, until you put in a new destination. That is the same way I see the brain. The brain will continue to do or believe or hold on to whatever it is you tell it until you program it to something else. Oh, that, you know what? That sounded so simple. Yay. Okay. Yes. So the brain will do whatever it is that you're telling it to do until you program it to do something else. So, with that being said, let's talk about how we get programmed and conditioned. So, my favorite thing about it is just like, let's just talk about this, because I feel like even as we talk about this, you know, this may support someone. This may be an aha moment for someone. This may be the seed that someone needs to water in order for the knowing that they have to spout. And so I want to talk about programming and conditioning, which I tend to use interchangeably. And what I'm talking about programming and conditioning, I am talking about the subconscious mind. I'm talking about that level, the part of the mind that operates below our normal level of waking consciousness. It is the part that of our mind that is storing information, that is storing information, that is holding on to memories and beliefs and ideas and rituals and all these things that help us function in this world, that help us show up, that help us be able to do things even when we don't feel up to it, even when we don't fully remember, we can still do things, right? Like there's some times where people are like, I know I do this, where I'm like, I don't know my password, but I know the pattern, right? Like I'm like, damn it, I don't know exactly what, but I know the pattern. And so I can do like this to remember the pattern, you know, of something, because it is stored in my subconscious. And though I may not fully remember every detail, I do know because of the pattern and the habit. And that is because my subconscious looks out for me. Okay. But let's talk about it. Okay. Let's get into it. So when we come into this world, you know, we are what I like to call a blank canvas. We are a new start. We are a fresh vessel that is ready to be poured into, right? So we come into this world and, you know, at first our parents are taking care of us. They're feeding our needs. We grew up in this household probably. We have community around us. We have churches around us. We have schools around us. We have religious communities around us. Whatever it is that our family are a part of, we become a part of that world. So in that world, right, and I'm talking from a perspective of a Black American woman who grew up in queen who grew up in New York City. And so my world is probably different from your world. So my conditioning will clearly be different from yours. My programming will be clearly different from yours. And so basically we grew up in we are raised in these households, right? We're taught how to behave. We're taught what's socially acceptable, what's socially not acceptable. We are taught what it means, in my opinion, what it means to be human, how humans behave, how they must act. We're also told to go to school. We're told to behave a certain way in school. I don't think I've heard this a lot, but I know that growing up, people say this a lot, like you got to work 10 times as harder than your counterparts, blah, 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 right? And so like all this is programming. This is people telling you, giving you their beliefs, right? If Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, that is maybe a belief that you have been shared with you, and you may have taken that in as your truth, right? And so like this may be part of your perception of the world, that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior and I follow the Bible, right? That might be a belief you have and you hold on to, and you pray without season, or certain things are a sin, whatever it is, right? You hold on to these beliefs that you have now accepted as truth. So as a kid, you've given all this information, whatever that information is, whatever it is they're teaching you. It could be about how often a woman must shower, how a woman must care for herself, what it means to be ladylike, what it means to be a man, whatever it is that they are teaching you. And it doesn't have to be something someone outright say. It can be like, maybe you like someone's accent and you find that to be intriguing, and so you take on this accent as a part of your identity or the way you express. That can be a form of conditioning and programming. I know like a big one in my family was like voodoo is bad, it's negative, right? And so like everyone, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people in my family believe that voodoo is a bad and a negative thing, and therefore they stay away from it, or they don't want to deal with it, or they see it as something to fear. And because they don't have any personal relationship with voodoo, they just know what they've been told, and so they follow that. I myself was taught to believe that voodoo was bad and it was negative, and I did believe it. I was scared of it for a very long time. I was scared of psychics. I was scared of tarot and oracle readers, because I believed that they could read into my future, and that I thought it would be weird that people know things about me that I didn't know about myself. And so like, you can have different beliefs because of this. Another belief I had was that, I was scared of dogs, but I was only afraid of dogs because where I lived, most of the dogs around me were Rottweilers, and they were taught to fight each other. They were taught how to have matches, and so they tended to be aggressive. And though Rottweilers may be aggressive and assertive or whatever, protectors, right? Like not all of them are trained or raised or brought up to be aggressive, to attack, And so I had this belief, but it was an illusion, because though that may be true for some Rottweiler pets, it doesn't mean all of them are dangerous, all of them are going to attack me, or all of them are trained to attack. But it was a belief I had because of the world I came from, the world I existed in, what I saw in the world I was a part of. Was that this was what those animals were for. But when I moved out of the area I was in, and I was more exposed to more parts of and more examples of what it is to be a pet owner and how pets and these things operate and work, I had a different perception of it. And so, a lot of our programming is happening in small spaces, depending on how we're raised. If you're raised traveling a lot, you may have a very different belief about humanity and about our existence and about what it means to be a human, or how we act, or what is socially acceptable, what is not socially acceptable. I think for each person, it can be such a subjective thing, because we have to take into account your conditioning, your programming, what you were raised in. And so conditioning happens to everyone. It's not a negative thing, or it's not something to avoid. It's happening to all of us, because it's what makes us us, and what helps us to know that we are separate, as far as like individuals and things of that sort. So yeah, so programming is happening. It starts as us being infants. A lot of research says it goes up to about the age of 7 or 8, which is also the age where our egos are usually formed. And I also believe that our subconscious is also what I would call the ego. It's what we have accepted to be our truth, who we believe we are, who we say we are, what our beliefs are, how we operate in this world, what makes us us. What makes us different from the next person or similar to the next person. And I think what's so interesting is too often I've seen people and also us, right, be taught how to compare. We're compared against our siblings, which I think is so interesting because it's like, even if we're raised in the same home, our conditioning and our programming will not be the same. And for that reason, a comparison is fruitless. It tells you nothing really, aside that you're different. You're uniquely you as you should be. So that's why I love this subject so much, because it takes you beyond just surface level stuff. It makes you think a little deeper about what is happening inside of our bodies. Our subconscious is constantly expressing itself, whether we are aware of it or not. It is constantly expressing itself. It is constantly playing in the background and influencing us, influencing how we behave, influencing how we show up, because it is part of our beliefs, right? Like when people get, if you see a male walking across the street on the same side of the street as you and it's dark outside, and all of a sudden you feel uneasy and you decide to cross the street, that may be part of your programming. Like I have a dog in my area where I don't know why, but every time we're on the same side of the street, I cross the street. It's a big dog. It looks like the dogs from like the police have. And so every time I cross the street, I'm pretty sure the owner has noticed that, but it's because like certain dogs scare me. They make me nervous, and rather than deal with them, I avoid them, right? And I know this is happening in my subconscious. I know I have no real reason to be scared of this dog. This dog has done nothing. I have not seen this dog try to jump on anyone when it walks past or try to get away from the owner, nothing like that. But because of my subconscious, because of my beliefs about animals, which is that people can't control their dog, you can't control what your dog does, whatever happens kind of energy, I just try to avoid some of them. And that's a big dog. That was a big dog, and I'm thinking about it now because I saw the dog this morning and I just thought it was the funniest thing. But this is how the subconscious works. It's like, there's stories and narratives we have in our mind that whether or not we are aware of them, they are operating and they are influencing how we show up. And that's because of the conditioning, the programming, right? So I've been robbed before. So I don't put robbing behind nobody, you know what I mean? So it's stuff like that, like beliefs I now have because of my own personal experiences that I may take with me. But I also know that none of it is true to the general, right? It may be true to that experience, but like it can't tell me what this experience is. It can give me an idea of what may be happening in this experience, but it can't tell me that this is exactly what's happening unless I deal with the experience in the moment. Like I feel a lot of different energies. So a lot of times the reason why I can interpret energy is because I've experienced the energy before. I felt it before. I witnessed it before. And so I'm like, this is a familiar energy. I know this energy. This is what this energy is. But part of that is like, yeah, intuitive. And another part of it has to do with memory. And so, some people may be like, well, just because that was it in the past doesn't mean it's it now. And I agree. And I also know that what I have learned in the past matters, right? And so it's my responsibility to be able to interpret the energy, understand that I know it because of past, not because of what's happening in this moment, but then using that knowing and that experience to help me understand the present moment. So it's not for me to assume this is what's happening because that's what it was in the past, but for me to just utilize that information to help me make sense of what's happening right now with everything I know about the world as of today, everything I have in my awareness as of today. And so Yeah, like programming conditioning is something that starts at a very young age as children. When we become adults, we are still carrying that programming. We may not know all the programming, right? All the coding, all the autopilot destinations we placed inside ourselves. And that's why this process of reprogramming your mind is so important, because when you do become aware of things that you have taken in as truth, that you have saved and logged as if it's a part of your beliefs or perceptions of the world or perspectives, when it comes to your awareness, you can then decide, do I still believe this? Is this still my truth? And if it's not your truth anymore, then you can reprogram that. And we're going to talk about how to do that later. But if it is your truth, then you just hold on to it. And how you go about recognizing old patterns or old beliefs and how they're playing a part in your life, a lot of that is awareness. It's going to be a lot of self-awareness is needed in order for you to do this part. And it's nothing you have to like force. It's just literally like, a lot of this is no pressure. It's just practicing mindfulness, becoming more aware of like your thoughts, becoming more aware of your patterns, of your habits, of what you believe to be true, and then deciding whether or not that's something you want to hold on to. And an example I have is like growing up, because of how I grew up, because of how I was raised, because of the environments I was in, I was very defensive. I always felt like I had to protect myself. And a lot of ways I did that was by fighting or just like being very assertive. And so as I was growing up, I believed that, I was this biatch, this a B word. I really thought that I was that because of my attitude. My attitude was just like, it was so interesting because I have always been like a very bubbly, happy-go-lucky person. But then there was also the defensive side of me because I felt like people tried to take advantage of me because I was so nice and bubbly and very like, I can come off as naive when I just don't care. That's really what it boils down to. I don't care that much. And so I wasn't really trying to protect myself as much, in the sense that like, I just wanted to be me. But then when I got into the real world, it was just like, well, you can't be this open because people will take it as if like they can, be unkind to you and bully you. And so like, I took on the role of the bullier at some point because that's what people were doing to me. And so I was just like, no, I need to take care of myself. I need people not to like think it's okay to be unkind to me. And so I kind of built up this defensive system for myself. And part of that was just me like being assertive, very saying what I wanted to say with no tact. I was like very direct, but it was just like, honestly, it was rude. It was rude. And it would like, I was saying in front of other people, and then people would laugh about it. It was just like, what I'm sure y'all know people like that. Like, I was very just like in my own pain and hurt and just trying to take care of myself. And so I developed this persona that was just like the B word and like willing to fight, willing to fight or be assertive and like argue with you back and forth, whatever. But that was a persona I kind of put on and I did wear for most of my life. But when I became an adult and I had a more awareness, and one day I got in an argument and I was just like, in the middle of the argument, I stopped and I was like, in mid-sentence, it was just like, this is not me. And I like literally tried to walk away from the argument. The person kept following me, but it was just like, I had recognized that I wasn't being myself. Like, yes, the old version of Charlie was like that because I felt like I had to be in order to survive my environment. But once I got it out of that environment, I didn't need that version of me, but I didn't reprogram it. But I also didn't have awareness that that wasn't me because I had grown up to believe that's who I was, because that's how I always knew myself to behave. So now that I'm older and I'm like, I'm not a fighter, I don't want to argue. Even if I find myself back in those patterns, the minute I have awareness of it, I stop. and I don't engage anymore. And I don't care what anybody thinks about it or anybody feels about it. My ego is not that fragile to care, because I am reprogramming myself to know that I am not a fighter. I don't want to fight. And I'm good. Like, you know, I get to just be this happy-go-lucky person in this world that is unbothered by other people, you know, being triggered by me, right? Like, just because you are yelling and screaming doesn't mean I need to join you. What am I joining you for? You know what I mean? And so it's like stuff like that. But that is part of conditioning. Even how we react in stressful situations is part of the conditioning, is part of the programming. And so my hope is that, you know, this video also encourages you to pay attention to yourself and see if like you're acting in ways that are aligned with who you truly are, who you believe yourself to be in this season. And just because like you're like, no, I'm still with the shits, it's okay to still be with the shits. The whole point is that you are now in control of your subconscious. You are now in control of your ego. You are now managing yourself, as opposed to letting your brain, letting your ego manage you. No, it is not a master. It is not a master. It is not a master of you. No. You are in control. And I think that with awareness, you can take the reins and drive it in an intentional direction that works for you. You can learn how to program yourself. You can learn how to set new intentions for yourself, set new beliefs for yourself, set new habits for yourself. You can do, believe, show up, set up yourself in a way that puts you in the best position to live your best life and to create a life that you love, that you understand, and that you feel like that you have some kind of control over. Like, because you do have control over yourself. You may not have control over what everyone else is doing, but you have control over yourself. Yeah, so I think that that's the main of it. Conditioning starts at a very young age. When we are infants, it starts there and it continues on throughout the rest of our lives. But the bulk of it is up until we're about 7 or 8 years old, where we're pretty established in our beliefs and our ideas of who we say we are, and our ideas of what it means to be human, how we are to show up, what the social rules are. We usually know all this, right? Because we start going to school. You notice that, I know in the US, a lot of our schools teach us how to behave, how to follow directions, and all these things. All of that is part of the programming. All of that is part of the system, right? Even the grading system, the fact that, you know, I think it's great that everybody can get 100, you know, when we're in grade school. But when you get into like law school, for me, it's like not everybody can get an A. You know, there was a certain amount of A's, B's, C's, whatever, 4.0s, 2.0, whatever, that each class can get. So someone was going to fail regardless, right? And that's like more of a comparison kind of system. Someone has to fail. So who's going to be that someone? You know, and it's like things like that that you keep in mind and recognize that, you know, a lot of the way the world is set up is to convince us that there's a way of being, that success looks a certain way, that being human looks a certain way, that there are certain things that are just not acceptable. But the reality is that's not true, because everybody have their own world. Yeah, yes, we may agree to follow the rules of the collective, but at any point we could decide not to follow the rules of the collective, and it doesn't make us necessarily wrong or inhumane or unkind. It could just be us like being rebels and taking back our power and recognizing that I don't have to do life the way I've been told I have to do life. I get to do life in a way that feels good and feels aligned for me. And so like that's what I want to encourage you all to do, is to know that like we have been conditioned, we have been programmed, all of us. And this is why I don't have an issue with a lot of things that people say about like I remember in grad school, I didn't understand why people had such an issue with talking about racism. Because for me, because they talk about it a lot in social work school, because of the clientele social work tends to support and help. And so for me, it's like, I don't like, racism is a sad thing, yes. But the reality of it is that it is part of conditioning. It is part of programming. And so even if someone don't think that they are racist, right? They may have biases and prejudices and beliefs that they're holding on to because of the way they were raised, because of what they were told growing up. Yeah, and I can all that literally, right? Even racial awareness. A lot of people that have racial awareness is probably because of the way they were raised or what they read or what they studied. I remember I was not a person that talked about race at all or a lot because it wasn't. I grew up in a world where like survival was everything. My dad was very big on survival. I don't ever remember my dad comparing me to other people, telling me I had to be better than this. I don't remember ever experiencing that. I heard it more from teachers and from people around me, but that wasn't something in my household, right? So community also plays a part in conditioning. But I do know that a lot of beliefs came from what I was reading, what I was around, what people were talking about around me, what conversations I was joining in on. But again, this all goes back to what you're around, what's available to you, what is the primary goals, right? And for my household, it was security, it was safety, and I think security was the biggest thing for my dad. My dad is a Capricorn man, okay? And, working, getting a job, being able to take care of yourself was really important. And it was the kind of things that my dad focused on when raising us. And again, right, that is what was important in that household. But someone else's household can have a very different focus and purpose and meaning. And because of that, that child will grow up different. And in any other case, the story remains with anyone, even with yourself as you're watching this. Think about things that were really important in your household and how has that impacted how you see the world today. I'm not saying that you agree with what was taught, but has that impacted what you experiencing now? Are you out in the world looking for something opposite than what you're used to? Are you out in the world trying to explore more of what wasn't acceptable around you? Are you questioning more? Are you seeking out new adventures? Are you trying to travel more so that you can get immersed in other cultures? I know for me, I read about a lot of different religions. I did because what I was taught about Christianity and all these other things, right? I wanted to explore even further what it meant to be a believer. What does that even mean? And do I really believe? I got to question more. And that's what we will do with this awareness we have that's coming up from our subconscious. We want to question it. We want to know. We want to challenge it. If there's something else that can be true, if there's another belief that can be more empowering, we want to challenge that belief that we currently have in order to develop something new. And so I say all that to say we are all conditioned. Conditioning does not stop. And that is why this is such an important thing to keep in mind, because as we're going to talk about in a few, is even our environments affect what we believe to be true. Even our environments influence, what we believe to be true, how we're showing up in our identity, what we feel is okay and acceptable in this world. I love reading comments because I feel like that reflects a lot about people's perspectives, about how they believe the world works. And that doesn't make it true. It just makes it a possibility, right? That it makes it an option, but it's not the only option. It's just one of many options that we have. And so I want to really encourage us all to, one, accept the fact that we're all conditioned. We're all programmed. Maybe there are some people in this world, I wouldn't doubt it, that that they have reprogrammed themselves in a way that they're mostly aware of what their triggers are. They're mostly aware of where their pain points are or trauma that they've experienced and how it's influencing their lives now. Even that too, talking about trauma, if you've experienced trauma, even if you don't remember it, your body remembers it. So even that is influencing how you show up. I think about, I never used to like to be hugged. Oh, don't touch me, don't hug me. It makes me uncomfortable back in the day. But I've done a lot of work on my sexual trauma, on my emotional trauma, on my attachment style, that has really helped me become more comfortable and vulnerable with people and spaces, and hugging and touching and holding hands more, and just being more open as far as my energy field goes, because I've done a lot of like releasing of the dense energy that told me that my body wasn't a safe place. And people coming into my energy field wasn't safe. And so I had work to do. I had a lot of inner work to do to let my inner child know she was safe. And I remember seeing my inner child, visualization, and she was just like so scared. She just wanted to be hugged and knew that she was safe just being here. And so everybody experiences different, but I really, really like want to drive that home. I know that this portion is longer than I expected, but it feels so important. It feels so important to this conversation. So I wanted to stay here, and I really want to drive home the importance that programming and conditioning is happening. It starts when we are young, and it goes on for the rest of our lives. However, we can become aware of it and be more intentional about how we're programmed, by whom we're programmed, and whether or not that's a programming we want to subscribe to. When you're a child, it's easy to say yes to everything because you are an empty vessel, and there's nothing in you to contradict what people are pouring into you. But the minute you start having beliefs and ideas about how the world works, then you start feeling that resistance, because now you have beliefs and perceptions and ideas about life. And so when new information is coming in, your ego or your subconscious is like, wait, that doesn't fit, So yeah, something to keep in mind. I think about it too with people who have very deep religious beliefs that aren't open to hearing other people's perception of what's possible in the spiritual realm, right? They only believe what they believe, and that's it. There's no room for anything else, which is fine, but that's also a way of conditioning, It just it's just what it is. And it's not right or wrong, because again, like I said, everybody's conditioned. The conditioning is different for all of us, but it is conditioning. And so just something to keep in mind. We're all being conditioned by our parents, by our family. It's the things people say around us that we may be taking in. Because remember, the subconscious is working behind the scenes. It is taking in the information around it. Because remember too, right, we have intuition and we have survival instincts as human beings. And so that's why our subconscious mind is taking in all this information, because you may not be paying attention to the man on the right, but something in your body may be like, yo, turn right. And you might see someone who look very suspicious, like they're up to something, and that may tell you to leave the area, right? Whether or not you are right on or not, but there's something telling you to leave that area. Is because like your body and the way we're made is processing information constantly, and everybody's different. So I think it's also important that you get to know yourself. The way my intuition works, the way I speak with spirit is very different, but I have a knowing about it. So, you may not pick up on something I'm picking up on, but that doesn't make it less true for me. It's still like my truth. But again, right, we're all programmed, we're all designed, we're all set up to be uniquely us. And so it's super important that you get to know yourself. And that's why I want to talk about how I reprogram my mind, because yes, there are tons of ways to do it, but this has worked for me over the years. It has been so fun as well. And I'm so excited to finally like talk about it and share it and geek out about it with you all. So next section. So by the time we're like 7 or 8 years old, we basically already have like a solid foundation of belief based on all that programming from people in our lives, television shows, books we've read, spiritual beliefs we followed, and environmental influences. We already have a pretty solid foundation, and we have an idea of who we are. And I can say this for myself. So I grew up in foster care most of my childhood until I was 10. And so when I got with my biological mom when I was 10, I had already had a solid foundation of who I was. So when I got to her and she was trying to tell me stuff, it was just like, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, who? No. And so even at the age of 10, I knew I was just trying to survive till I was 18. You know, like these are just things I had developed for my own survival, my own beliefs. And like, that's basically what I focused on. But I remember being 10, feeling like this lady has nothing to offer me. And I'm not saying that that was true, but I remember feeling that way. Like, I'm already who I am. Like, you trying to tell me who I am is just like, no. And I'm not saying like I have more to learn,
Clearly.
but I'm just getting at the fact that like our foundation is usually set, and then at that point it really is a challenge to change people's minds once they have that foundation set. And not everyone is going to be the same, right? Because there's some people who are more open to what's possible, but depending on what they've learned over the years or believe to be true about the world or life. I also believe that we bring in wisdom and knowledge from ancestors, from our past lives, whatever else. So there's like a combination of things happening. So I do want to put that out there. Like, I'm not saying that everyone is very strict and sturdy. No, because we're uniquely us. Like I said, people can be in the same household and have very different experiences. It doesn't matter. You know, it's not about that. It's about our makeup. It's about our perception of life. It's about what we believe to be true. It's about our processing, you know, because I probably process different than my siblings. And so what I believe to be true may be different than what they believe to be true. It really just depends. And so the best thing is to get to know people instead of assuming that we all think the same. We all process things the same. We all understand things the same way. It's just not true. I like, sometimes I just think like the things we say to each other and the expectation we have of each other, to me, blows my mind sometimes. I'm just like, there's very rarely room for people to just be. It's this idea that I can assume your intentions because I'm human too. And it's just like, but that's not considering everything else about me and what I've seen, what I know, what I've experienced, because all that is playing into how I'm expressing, how I'm reacting, how I'm responding, how I'm showing up, how I'm feeling about something. You know, it's the same thing like when people say, oh, you're overreacting. You don't get to say I'm overreacting. Because from your perception of what you believe to be true, you think I'm overreacting, but you're not taking into account all my experiences, my mindset, the way I process how I perceive what you're saying, even if I'm wrong, right? Like, you don't know. And so like, I think like compassion, empathy, grace, all those things kind of work when we're interacting with each other, because it opens up space for people to just be who they are and for us to just be there with them, as opposed to being like, well, you lack common sense. Well, what's common to you in your world may not be common to me. So that's another thing, right? Like, my brain looks for legal issues all the time. And so like, when I talk to it look for legal issues and it asks a lot of questions. So like, when my nieces say stuff to me, I ask a million questions. And like, at first people be like, what? But they get used to like, that's just how I process things. That's how I interact with people. And like the legal thing, like, I'm a trained attorney, you know what I mean? Like, so my brain doing that, I'm programmed. You know, when I first came out the military, I used to call everybody sir and ma'am. I was programmed. You know, you're programmed in these cultures, you're programmed in these worlds you're a part of. That's a big reason why I left the litigation field when it came to law, because I didn't want to be programmed by that environment, by that space. And I saw that I couldn't control it enough. So the best thing for me to do was to leave. Because if not, it was going to be another system programming me, telling me how to treat people, telling me how to behave. And yes, I have some control over it to an extent, but sometimes it can be overpowering to the point that if you're not aware, you're subconsciously doing these things. You're subconsciously judging people, whether you mean to or not, because you have biases about who they are or how they present. So it's just so many things to keep in mind, but here we are. And that's that. So let's see what's up next. Yeah, like I mentioned before earlier that, you know, this idea that I was a bee, or that, you know, I was a fighter, and, you know, those weren't true about me. And those were things that I held on to and I believed to be true about myself, because like, that's how I showed up. That's how I operated. That's how I was taught to survive in my world. But it wasn't true. And so like once I reprogrammed my mind, then I didn't feel this need to always be on the defense. So when people were saying stuff, I didn't take it personal, because I was taking a lot of things personal because I believed that things were personal. Oh, they're attacking me, they're making me feel. But when I changed my mindset to, it's not personal, people are expressing their own pain, people are expressing their own beliefs. A lot of people are projecting. People tend to see the world in a way that they see the world, and so that they may interpret my actions as a reflection of how they perceive the world, and it may have nothing to do with me. So yes, I am responsible for the energy I send out, but I'm not responsible for how people receive that. But that was something I had to program myself to know, believe, and hold on to, that people weren't coming for me. They was expressing whatever was going on with them for whatever reason, whether that means that I triggered them and that's their reaction, but it wasn't personal. It wasn't about me. They can make it about me. Everybody can say it's about me, but it's not about me. I know it's not about me. So like, that's a belief I have now, right? Before, everything was personal. I take everything personal. You came for me. You disrespected me. You did this. You did that. But older me is just like, I'm not taking anything personal. This ain't got nothing to do with me. Like, I'm not going to take responsibility for you, for your reactions. Like, that just doesn't even make sense to me. Like, those are your reactions. You get to choose them. You could say all you want that I provoked it. It's still your reactions. It doesn't matter how we got here. It's your reaction. So, people don't have to agree with that perspective of it, but for the most part, I take responsibility for if I know that what I'm saying is provoking you, then, I'm willing to deal with whatever consequences. But the reality is, like, I had to program myself to not take things personal. And that has literally changed my life. It changed my life. It changed my world. It changed my experience. It changes my stress level. It changes my blood pressure, my availability to peace, my availability to joy, my availability to ease. It just really changes everything. And so, this whole programming thing, and programming our mind, and programming our subconscious, is also to correct the negative thoughts, the overthinking tendencies that we may have. You can even change that with a more powerful, or not powerful, more empowering or positive affirmation or belief or thought. When we remind ourselves that these negative thoughts that we have are not our truth, it's just something that's familiar right now, but we can make something else more familiar and more empowering be our truth that we can hold on to as we journey through. One thing I do believe, I'm like, when I talk, this is only my truth in this moment. I may come into awareness of something as soon as I end this video, and it may change everything I believe to be true. But it doesn't change that was a truth at some point, at some journey in my life. But the reality is, that's why I think it's so important to be able to reprogram yourself, and to do it intentionally. Reprogram your mind, and to do it intentionally, because it gives you more power over who you say you are, who you believe you are, and who you show up as. You really do have control. I think it's such a freeing thing that I get to enjoy so many aspects of myself without feeling like I have to be one thing all the time. Like, no, I get to evolve, I get to grow, I get to expand, I get to experience so much more of life. And I do that by reprogramming my mind and expanding what I believe to be possible in this world, in this realm, and in our life. So with that being said, right, programming and conditioning is affecting us in every day, every moment. It's influencing how we show up, who we are, who we say we are, who we believe we are, and how we see this world. And so now that we know that, this conditioning starts when we are children, we tend to have a solid foundation by the time we're 7 or 8. And from there, the conditioning doesn't stop. And the conditioning continues to affect us in the present, and it will continue to affect us throughout life. We're constantly being conditioned and programmed. You can pay attention to, I say use this theory and look into how you behave in certain environments. Look into how you behave around certain people. Do you notice that you pick up other people's mannerisms? That was something I noticed about myself. Even like accents, I can pick it up. Because I think it's also important for you to know how vulnerable you are to conditioning, to picking up on conditioning, to being conditioned by others, because this will also let you know what kind of life you want to build around yourself. I know that, well, we're about to talk about it right now, about my process of reprogramming. I know that with my process is really, and because of who I am, and I know how my design is set up, it's really important that I hang out with people that I respect, that I love, that how they show up and how they are. So just in case I pick up any of their habits I want. You know what I mean? And it's not about people being perfect, but like, you know, you just want to make sure that if you're going to pick up on some habits, they're habits you want. And so I take very serious who I hang around, where I'm willing to work, what I'm willing to be a part of, and how often, because I know that it can affect how I show up and it can affect how I express. And because I know that I am influenced, I do believe I'm influenced by those around me. I think it's a little bit more challenging for those behaviors to stick, only because if I notice it, I'm going to be like, that's somebody else. I remember I was hanging out with one of my homegirls, and I noticed I started talking the way she talks. And I could feel it inside my mouth. Like the way my tongue was moving, the way my words were. I was just like, what the hell? And I realized it was because of this friend I had been hanging around with. Like, I adore her, I love her, and I was just having so much fun. And so I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And I continue to do stuff like that. I love taking a taste and experiencing other people's energy. And I don't hold on to it because, like I said, I am aware that it's happening. That's why I'm very careful about who I hang out with. But I do love that I get to experience a lot of different energy because, like, I pick up on energy. I do what I want with it. Sometimes I sample it. Hello, reflectors. Sometimes I sample it, and sometimes I just like, oh, that was cute, and I let it go. But like the younger version of me would do that, and I would really take on people's mannerisms. And like I think one time my homeboy called it out. He was a Taurus. And I was just like, huh. And I started paying more attention to myself. And I was like, oh, I do have this habit. Even when I moved to Maryland, I had an accent within like a month. So, things that you learn about yourself and you know about yourself. And so, you can take more control over how you're showing up and how you want to show up and how to make that happen. So, yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so this is the portion where I'm going to share with you how I reprogram my subconscious mind. And there are several ways to do it. There's not just one way, but I want to share with you how I go about it. I did write down some notes because I didn't want to forget anything. And I also think that this is like a great way. This is also a way for you to coach yourself, for you to build yourself up, for you could really redefine yourself into a whole new person through reprogramming your mind, because what you believe to be true is influencing and impacting how you experience this world, right? So if I believe that life is hard, I'm probably going to live a hard life, right? If I believe that nothing good ever works out for me, there's probably going to be a lot of challenges on my journey because I'm looking for them, because I need stuff outside of me to confirm what I believe to be true, right? So like someone who believes that they're not good enough, every time they get a rejection, it's like, oh my God, see, I told you I'm not good enough. It's not even worth trying, right? So like these are, when we have beliefs in our subconscious, we tend to look for information outside of us to verify that belief. So we see evidence of it even if it's not there, because it is a belief we have. So we will see the evidence even if we're not there. So that may mean like if someone doesn't believe they're worthy enough, no matter what you say to them, they're not going to believe they're worthy enough, right? So they probably reject any compliments you give them. They probably will reject when you say kind things to them, when you say loving things to them. They probably will reject these things because they don't believe it's true at a subconscious level. Or like they haven't yet found comfort in receiving compliments and receiving praise because of whatever belief they have, right? So basically there's a lot of reasons why people can't easily accept compliments and stuff. I know that I was a person, I think, that couldn't really accept gifts. I too used to kind of reject compliments, right? They made me uneasy or uncomfortable. now like people can compliment me and I'm like, thanks. Or I probably will like, yeah, I'm happy you noticed, right? Like, you know, I can accept them more because I'm obsessed with myself in a way I believe is healthy. Like, the same way I feel about myself, I feel about everyone else. Like, that you're amazing, you're magical, you can create worlds on top of worlds whenever you feel like it. Like, I believe what's in me is in you too. So it's not like I just think this big thing about myself. No, I think this way about all of us. And it's just a matter of tapping into it. And this is one way to do it, by reprogramming your mind and having fun while doing it. This does not have to be super serious, super boring. It's literally you're playing with your brain. And it's an elastic thing, you know, it's stretchable. Anywho, all right. So how I reprogram my subconscious mind. So I think to start off too, this sounds like fun or it sounds like something you're interested in. I say commit to it because it is an ongoing process and it doesn't end. But throughout the process, you may find ways that are easier or simpler or more fun, whatever it is. I don't know what you might find, right? Like, I don't know what you might find, but you may realize something as you're journeying along. If you do it the way I'm sharing, you may realize another way. I kind of just happen to learn this through life, through experiences. I think, yeah, I just learned this. It just became part of my process. I think a lot of times spirit just guides me on stuff and I just build on top of it. Once it start working, I build and build and build. So also trust your intuition. If anything is coming up, please trust it. Please know that there's so many ways to do it. You need to make it your own so it can be most effective for you. You may find a hack or whatever else, a way through that is different from what I'm saying, but that's just as fun and exciting for you. And I want to encourage you to do that. Okay. So the first thing for me is always awareness. I think that with awareness is the start of a lot of different processes and programmings I am into. And because once you have awareness of something, you can then make a choice. And I think that with awareness gives us more choices. So with that said, that will be the first thing, awareness. And then at this point of my journey, after awareness would be to implement a strategy that basically helps me reprogram. So I will say, commit to this process, right? So like that's the first thing. It's like decide and commit to this process that you're gonna do this. Know that this is a lifelong thing throughout life, right? It'd be automatic. Right now, some of my reprogramming strategies are automatic. And one of the things that's automatic is interrupting thoughts. So that's actually one of my first strategies. So I'm going to go through my strategy. So like I said, the first thing is awareness. So you want to become aware of whatever it is you want to change. So if I notice that I get defensive about certain topics, right? I might set an intention that I want to reprogram that. Like, that's not really necessary. That's not really supporting me. That's not really helping me. I want to reprogram that. So I might decide what is the best way to reprogram it. Because it may be a matter of exposing myself to the situation more so that I can reprogram it. Or, yeah, because I do that too. I will expose myself to situations that I don't feel comfortable in. But I do that a lot with my nervous system. In order to reprogram my nervous system or reset my nervous system, I put myself in situations that I know will activate my nervous system to remind myself that I'm safe, right? So that's one way to do it, is to expose yourself to the situation more and more so that you can reprogram it. So I actually didn't write that, but let me write that here. That's one way to reprogram your mind, is to, you know, expose yourself to the situation, and then every time you're in it, you know, to either say an affirmation, implement another strategy, because these strategies, you can use them together. They're not like standalones. They're something that you can use together. So one of them is exposure. The next one I would say is interrupt thoughts. The interrupting thoughts, usually also I do that with affirmations. And so what that might look like is, I put an example here. So an example is if I catch myself commenting, like if I make a judgment about strangers walking in the street, I will interrupt the thought because what? So that is a thought I interrupt. Like if I catch myself judging people behavior or the way they're showing up or whatever else, I will interrupt it and I will either question it or create an affirmation that is the opposite of it, that's more empowering, or just continue to interrupt the thought to get myself out of the habit of judging because I don't feel comfortable. I personally don't feel comfortable judging people and their actions because I don't know the full story. But I'm so used to doing it. It's such a habit that it just happens. Now it doesn't happen as much, right? Because I've been doing this for a while now, interrupting thoughts, probably over a year, definitely over a year, where I interrupt the thoughts that I have about people, judgments I have about people, in order to get myself to get out of that habit of doing that. Because for what? Because if I project on them, because what I noticed about myself, a lot of times the judgments I make are more about me than they are about the person. So for me, it's just like, oh, you got an issue with you? Let's talk about it. What do you need? What will support you right now, as opposed to projecting and making a judgment about someone else. Granted, right, I might still judge, and that's okay too. I'm not against it because I do believe that like that's part of us staying safe in this world. We do live in a world where everybody is doing their own thing, and just because, if I notice something, I notice it. I don't have to like ignore it. But I just want to have more of a hold on my mind. I don't want to just going rampant, doing what it wants to do, creating chaos, because like, what our thoughts are do impact our emotions, it impact how we show up, it impact our beliefs, it impact what we say, it impacts slash influences how we behave. I know that, especially when I drink, the stuff in my subconscious comes up. So hello, I want love and kindness to come out, and truth in whatever ways it wants to be expressed. But I don't necessarily want to be unkind or aggressive or defensive. But if that is in my nature, if that is what's in me, it will be squeezed out. So I try to keep, things within me that I won't mind being squeezed out, that I want to project, that I want to share with the world. And so like that's why like reprogramming my mind is so important to me, and I find such joy in it, and it's just beautiful. All right. So, right, interrupting thoughts is the second one. Then we have reinforcement. So, reinforcement is like say for instance, I want to create a habit. Reinforcement is like a good thing to do because like I keep doing it, right? Or affirmations. Affirmations is something, you got to repeat. So there's a lot of repetition. So I feel like I put reinforcement and repetition together because this is another strategy, is like just to make it a habit, or reinforce, what you're programming, right? Keep putting the notes in, and eventually it will take over what was there before. It'll wipe out what was there before, and that will now be in rotation. And you keep doing it until it's set, and you'll know when it's set, because now it'll be so effortless. It'll be a part of your being, a part of your beingness, that you'll be like, I'm there, I made it, I think like people who are so proud of like how they react to things when they be like, yo, a year ago, I would have turned up. Now I'm unbothered. That's where you go. That's where you get, because it becomes intuitive at some point. Our behaviors and our patterns, right? We save it to our subconscious. I don't know why. Now I need to go look at the brain. I'm going to go look at the diagram of the brain to see why I keep talking about the back of my head. Anywho. It could just be like the way I'm talking about it. But okay, so reinforcement or repetition is a way to do it. So whether that's saying affirmations over and over, maybe you post up quotes, or you post up reminders, or you put reminders on your phone for you to do it. Right now, I actually am trying to create a habit around manifesting from the inside out. And so what that looks like is like, I don't really do mirror work, but like this week I'm doing mirror work, right? And so like it's a repetition, it's a reinforcement. And so I have like notes on my phone. Like I have reminders on my phone, reminder in my calendar. I set an alarm to make sure I did the thing already. And so like, I have to reinforce and create this habit, this new habit, because I'm not used to it yet. And so once it becomes habitual, then I probably don't need as many reminders. But like, until I create that habit, I'm going to put things around me to reinforce my actions, to reinforce me participating, to reinforce me showing up, to make it up, to create the habit. All right. So we got consistent, persistent, and reinforcement. Okay. And so next will be affirmations, right? Now, affirmations you can do in it alone, or you can do it with interrupting your thoughts. You can do it with reinforcement, right? It's not something you have to do alone. So affirmations, I think, is a great way to adopt empowering beliefs. When I first started out, self-love was like a big thing I worked on, and I used affirmations a lot for that. And so I had like affirmations saved in my photos, and I would favorite them. And every day I would read these affirmations, every day, every day, every day, until I felt like I didn't need them anymore. And I would then, have new affirmations I use. And at the beginning of my intentional journey, I use affirmations a lot to help reprogram a lot of my thoughts. And so, like, it's not enough to just know these things on a conscious level. You also want to, like, I know I'm amazing, I know I'm great, but I didn't always believe that. I thought I was defective. When people tried to tell me who I was and how I should behave, I would try to conform to that. I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I wasn't enough. But then, like, as time went on, I'm just like, that's just one way to be, but that's not the only way to be. And, the more confident I got in that belief that, like, there's so many different versions of me. I get to be any one of them. Even if you're not familiar with it, doesn't mean that she don't get to exist. She gets to exist. And so, like, it's things like that. You want to empower yourself. You want to remind yourself of your truth. And, on a surface level, on a conscious level, you may know this, but if you have beliefs within you that tells you you don't know enough, you're not enough, right? It's easy for other people who seem more confident to come in and program you. But if it's just really important that you know what you're saying yes to. And it's okay if you let some things slide and then you recognize, like, that was never me. I noticed for myself, like, how often I made adjustments in relationships. And so now I'm very mindful and way more careful about the things I'm saying yes to when I'm in a relationship, and the things I'm willing to adjust on or not adjust on, because I know what has happened in the past when I allowed someone else to tell me who I was or how I should behave, or that, they wanted something different. I became that different. But that was because, too, I didn't understand my own worth. And I thought that that was the right thing to do. And maybe it was at that time, but there's also other ways. And so, like, the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you evolve, the more truths you get to wear and try on. You can decide for yourself what's okay, what's not okay. You could be your own moral barometer, which I believe in being. Just so you're deciding for yourself what's okay and what's not okay. And it's also okay that you're still learning and growing, and you won't always know. And maybe you trust someone enough to, agree with their beliefs and to journey with them, and at the time it feels aligned and right. And maybe hindsight being 2020, you realize later, after you're out of the situation, that that was a shit show. It's part of the process. You're learning, so don't even worry about it. Is what I want to say. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is visualization. Visualization is another strategy that I find to be super helpful. And for those who don't feel like that they are great visualizers, I do want to say that it gets better. I don't know if that's the right word, or the right phrase, but, like, I never thought I was a good visualizer. I felt like I couldn't visualize or meditate, and honestly, both those things got way better. I can do both those things with ease. It took time, but a lot of that happened because of the subconscious beliefs I had, and also, like, my mind was always on go, because I was a pretty anxious person and a worrier and an overthinker, and so my mind was constantly filled with things to help me feel safe, even though also exhausting me, you know, but it was what was helping me back then. And so with time, you know, visualization without me forcing it, I love visualizing now, and it comes with such ease, especially when I'm affirming. Like, I can see myself happy, I can see myself joyful. And so I do want to talk about visualization as a strategy, because our emotions play such a big part in how we show up, and in our aura health, and all the things. So, like, you know, manifesting, visualization is big in the manifesting world, right? This idea that we are co-creators with spirit, with source, with ourselves, whatever you believe. But a lot of that comes with visualization, being able to see what it is we desire and being able to feel into that energy. And so even as you're reprogramming or programming yourself, visualization is a great way to do it. Especially, say for instance, like, you're an artist or a business owner, right? Being able to visualize a life you desire and a life you want and really feel into that, right, will help you be able to embody that energy, knowing that you are already it, knowing that it already exists for you, and you have to believe it's possible for you. And so visualization is a great tool to use to, right, really tune into other worlds, into other frequencies, into other possibilities, and bring that into fruition. So visualization is another way to program our minds, whether we're programming our minds on our truth, on an energy we want to embody, on a persona we want to embody, on an archetype we want to embody, on an experience we want to have, right? If we want to visualize how we want our day to go, that is a way to program ourselves about what's possible, right? The limitations or the limitless possibilities, whatever it is you're programming. Visualization is another way to do it, because, you know, our minds don't know what's true or not true, but, like, we can live as if it is true, right? We can feel as if it's happening right now. And so our mind can help us uh attract that which we desire. So as we're programming our mind to see this world, to feel into it, to be a part of it, then our energy and our aura can start attracting that experience to us, attracting more of that to us, right? Where our intention goes, energy grows, right? So if we're there and we're like, oh, this life, it feels so good. Yes, yes, yes. And then we go out into the world like, yes, this is the life I live. This is who I am. We attract that experience because that's what our aura is projecting out, right? And we all are energy readers to some extent, whether aware of it or not, right? When people are like, I don't like your vibe, I just wasn't feeling him, I wasn't feeling her, I don't really know them, but I wasn't feeling them. That's that energy talk to me. I'm like, oh, y'all feeling something. Y'all ain't feeling each, but y'all feeling something. You know, but that's that energy talk, right? We talk about something that we may not be aware of the process, but it's happening. And that's the same thing I'm talking about when I talk about this program in our mind, right? We're being conditioned and programmed regardless of whether or not we're aware of the process. My thing is that you can become aware of the process and intercept it and make it work for you, make it about you, and make it happen. So the other thing I want to talk about as a strategy too is environmental influences. These are the people, the places, the things, okay? I mentioned earlier how I know I'm influenced by people, and so I'm very careful about who I hang around. I'll let anybody go. Let me just throw that out there. Listen, I can love you deeply. And I can accept your behavior and accept who you are as a person and still be like, it's a no for me, you know, because I know what my needs are and I know what works for me, and I know, I just know who I am right now and who I'm expressing as, and how influences come to me. And so for me, I'm mindful of the energy I'm around, the people I'm around, the environments I'm around, because I know they influence my behavior. I notice that when I'm around certain family members, I talk louder than I'm used to, or I feel like I'm competing to be heard, right? But and I understand why too. And so for me, I really want to encourage you, if you're going to do this process, so also pay attention to your environment. Pay attention to when you're around people, are you exhausted when you leave them? So how often would you like to be around them? Are you distracted when you're watching a TV show? Or are your dreams different after you watch a TV show, or whatever you're digesting, food, people, like how does it feel? Last year I started to take a diary of my food intake as a way to understand how certain foods were making my body feel, because I started to realize that when I feel heavy and bloated, then I have depressive like symptoms. I start feeling like sad and like down and all these yuck, like heavy energy I start feeling depending on what I eat. So I started paying more attention to the foods I eat and how they were affecting my body. I would write notes about, what it felt like after I ate. Was I able to have a bowel movement? Like literally writing down all these notes. What was the sensation in my mouth? Did I feel hydrated? When like I was taking notes to really understand how food was affecting my body and how food was affecting how I showed up, right? Because if I'm feeling heavy and just disgusted and yuck and just like bloated, right, that's affecting my mood, that's affecting how I show up, and all these things. And so everything you're ingesting or ingesting too, everything you're taking in can affect you. And so it's super important that in this process you pay attention to that as well, and know that things are influencing you, know that people are influencing you. Do you notice certain habits you have after hanging out with a certain kind of people in your workspace? Do you notice that you've changed over the time since you've been there? How have you changed? Do you like the changes you've made? I know my brother-in-law was talking about how much he's changed since he started his job. And I was just so happy for him because his energy felt lighter. It felt different. He was like way more open-minded. And I just love that for him, for me, for us. Capricorn life. I'm not a Capricorn. He is. But yeah, so it's like I pay attention to stuff like that, just how it's all affecting us. And so I really do want to encourage environmental fluence as a part of your strategy, being very mindful of the people, places, things that you allow yourself to be a part of, even your friends that you hang out with, how often y'all talk, what y'all talking about. Because I even noticed like some conversations I was having just weren't replenishing or nourishing me in any way, but I was exhausted after them and I kept engaging in them. And I was just like, at some point I needed to create boundaries too, in order for me to have the experiences I wanted and create the world I wanted to live in. But you also have to be accountable for what you allow into your world and what you allow to stay active in your world. And so that's really important. I know that a lot of people there are people who really do value family. And so for them, they're willing to accept and take in whatever people express or whatever people are willing to share. And they'd be like, well, I have to as my mom, or I have to as my dad. I don't have those kind of beliefs, so I don't have those kind of beliefs. So I don't have those kind of issues. Anybody can get cut off at any time, and it's not personal, it's vibrational, and that's it. And what I can say is that my family has been very okay with that. Like, in a sense, like, it don't matter if they're okay with it, but I have noticed that people don't really take it personal. They're like, oh, you know how she is about her energy. That's literally what they say. And they're like, but you know how she is about her energy. She ain't gonna want to go because but I'm happy that they acknowledge that. Like, I'm not judging anyone. I don't know your lives, but that doesn't mean I want to be around that energy. And if I'm already in a vulnerable place, why would I put myself in a situation where the energy can be more overpowering, right? Like, if I'm in a vulnerable place and I'm feeling very open and very able to absorb whatever, I ain't gonna hang around people where I know have dense energy, or I know aren't aware of their energetic field, or don't practice self-awareness, because that means that whatever they're putting out, it's not intentional. They're just putting it out. So however it goes, it goes. But that may mean that I'm absorbing it to transmute it. But that may mean that I'm out for a day or two, because I gotta wait for that energy to pass through. Everybody's different. So it's like super important for you to know how your body works too. But I consider, like, I tell people I be having a people hangover. And sometimes when I'm around people, it takes like 2 days before I feel back to my energetic self. And so, like, now, right, that was before. Now I'm more mindful of like who I'm around, how long I'm around, and I know when to leave. Yeah, because I have people pleasing tendencies too. So that is something I am working on. My people pleasing tendencies are very interesting, but they do exist. And so I'm mindful of that too. But again, that subconscious mind, that being aware of the programming inside you, the beliefs that you have, ways that you have adopted to survive, to remember we are social beings and we have a social culture to be a part of. And so, like, there are social norms, social expectations, all these social things. And because of that, a lot of us are programmed on how to behave, how to be performative, how to code switch, and all these other things in order to be accepted and feel part of the community. And so, there's a lot to unpack there, and it can be a lot of programming there that you might want to explore. And some of the things you may want to reprogram, some of the things you may find, oh, it's okay, it helps me. That's it. And that's okay too, right? Like, literally you get to create your rules. You get to decide, do I want to subscribe to this or do I not? You could decide what programming you subscribe to. Like, I am very careful about what messages I read, what I watch for too long, who I listen to is a big one. Like, there's some people whose energy I just can't. Like, I won't even. No, absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, I just keep scrolling. It's just something to be mindful of. Like, everything ain't for you. You don't need to consume everything. You get to decide what you want to consume, and you can take more of a manager role in what you consume. And that means that you're being more intentional about what you say yes to, what you subscribe to, what you listen into, what you read, what you eat, what you discuss, how long you stay in a conversation, what you talk about, what you're not willing to talk about. Like, you have control over all those things, and these things do play a role in influencing. So just be mindful of that. The other thing too I want to say as a strategy, I guess, of sorts, or a tip, is to accept and allow what is, right? And I think that this may be challenging, but like everything, including the reprogramming your mind, it is a practice. It is something that you continue to do until it becomes intuitive, until it becomes a habit. So in this case, when I am talking about allowing what is, right, you don't have to approve of what's happening. You don't have to agree with it. It's not about that. But what it is about is accepting what is. And a reason why this helps your reprogramming, because it allows you to expand your mind. It allows you to expand what's possible, right? So you may think, like, you made all these plans, all these goals, and maybe you was planning for a trip and the trip got canceled. You have no idea. Like, they told you a reason, you don't think it's a good enough reason, whatever, right? But you being angry and mad and all these things about the trip being canceled doesn't change that the trip is canceled, right? So what's the point of being angry? And I think what this, and I'm saying, it's okay to feel what you feel, right? Feel the things, but I'm saying, like, you don't want to stay there creating a scenario and story about what's happening, about how wrong this is. What you might want to do is just accept, hey, this is the reality of what's happening. No, I am not excited about it. However, I trust that this has a purpose. Whatever that purpose is, right? Because we don't know everything. All we know is what we know. But there may be information you don't have readily available to you. There may be information a person's not sharing with you. There may be so much other stuff going on that you have no idea about, but you're feeling like you're being wronged, right? You're taking it personal. And what this strategy tells you, or encourage you to do, is to accept the unexpected, right? Allow it to be what it is, right? If the trip got canceled, yes, it sucks. Yes, it wasn't planned. But this is life. Uncertainty is going to happen. Life is going to unfold the way it's going to unfold. And you fighting it is not going to make it easier for yourself. Honestly, all it's going to do is frustrate you and then probably make you angry. And then you're going to be projecting on everybody. And again, right, the idea about programming is also, programming affects how we deal with stress situations, right? So if we're used to throwing a tantrum, we're going to throw a tantrum. If we're used to being angry and yelling and screaming, that's part of what we're going to do, right? We're just going to be frustrated. We're going to call the company a million times. We're going to get angry with the company. We're going to want our money back. We're going to want all these things to happen. But all of it is because something went in a way that we weren't expecting, and now we're trying to regulate the emotions we're feeling, and we regulate that however. But by programming our mind how we deal with, we can also program how we deal with stress, how we react to stress, how we react to the unexpected, how we react to uncertainty. Because I know I used to be such a brat. Like, I was so used to everything, like things going my way. And it seems contradictory because I also was a worrier, but I also was used to things going my way. So when things didn't go my way, I literally used to cry. Even as a young adult, I used to literally cry. And I grew out of it, but that's how I used to do. And I grew out of it because life is uncertain, right? And I needed to, and the more things would happen that I wasn't planning to happen, I eventually started to accept it. I eventually started to let it be what it is. And so now when things happen, yeah, it may make me feel some sort of way, but usually I'm just like, all right. I wonder why. But then I just keep going. I don't let anything really stop my flow, because I do believe that everything's happening the way it's supposed to, for the reason, whatever reason it's supposed to. So I really do want to encourage you to also adopt that kind of attitude where you just accept the unexpected, the uncertainty of life, because it really does help alleviate a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, a lot of tension that may build up over time, because you have expectations that, like, you are in control of life, when, like, honestly, there's so many things influencing our experience and what's possible for us that we may not even be aware of all of it, because I think things are happening on a collective level and a personal level. And so, like, yeah, we have influence over our experience and creating with spirit, but, like, there's other things influencing that, whether that's the planets, whether that's spirit, source, whatever we believe, or however we want to label it, or our own inner beliefs that's contradicting with what we're trying to create, um our own thoughts, even our conscious thoughts. What else? Yeah, there's just gonna be so many things influencing, our experience, that, it's just, we don't know everything. And so, like, the best thing to do is just trust the unfolding and be like, all right, cool. Like, and, just journey along. But yeah, so that's the way in which I reprogram my subconscious mind. I interrupt my thoughts sometimes. I expose myself to the situation so that I can get my mind, my body, whatever it is, used to the sensation that comes up, and then reprogram it to know that it's safe, it's okay, and to do it anyway. And I feel like it's easier to explain in a situation than it is to overhear, because I'm thinking of a situation, but it's like, it depends on what your experience is to determine whether or not you'll get it or understand it. And I'm trying not to make this video any longer than what it is, but whatever. So, right. So those are the ways you can reprogram yourself. And these are the ways I program and reprogram myself, is through exposure. I interrupt my thoughts. And when I interrupt my thoughts, whether that's a judgment about somebody or a thought I have about myself, I will interrupt it. And a lot of times I will create an affirmation that affirms a more empowering belief or idea. And then I will continue to repeat that anytime that thought comes up, or something of that sort, anytime that thought comes up, right? So I can reinforce that truth, so that it's programmed in me, and it becomes my truth. It becomes my automatic. It becomes like intuitive for me, right? It becomes just like a part of my showing up, a part of my DNA of sorts. So we got the reinforcement. You may want to do things over and over again, kind of do that repetition in order to, create that new habit, create that new belief, to really get it sustained within you, have it really strong and grounded in you. And then we have affirmations, right? We want to adopt empowering beliefs, especially for those limiting beliefs we have about ourselves, about the world, about others. You know, you can use empowering beliefs to help you reprogram your thoughts. And then we want to have environmental influences, being mindful of uh who you're around, the people you're around, the things you're around, what you're engaging with, how long you're engaging with, just being really intentional about that, knowing that it can possibly influence you, influence your how you show up. Remember that the subconscious is working in the background all the time. So it's constantly picking up information, picking up ideas, trying to sort it all out, trying to put it in places so that it can reaffirm what you already believe to be true. So when information comes in that contradicts something you believe to be true, you may need to use one of these strategies in order to reprogram your mind to believe this new truth and to release the grip it has on your current belief. Visualization is another one, right? We talked about where you just imagine and visualize whatever it is, whether it's the person you want to be, the life you want to live, where you want to go, how you want your day to go. I think that that's a big one that people do. And so, yeah, visualization is a great way to do that. And then we have to accept or allow what is. And that's basically being open to uncertainty, being open to the unexpected, being okay with how life unfolds without you feeling like you have to fight against what is. It's just a matter of just acceptance, acceptance and being able to pivot and adjust to change or the unexpected and being okay with it, So that's another way for you to expand your mind, expand what you believe, your perception of life and what you believe is possible. And so, yeah, that's what I got. Oh, that was exciting. But yeah, so there are several ways, and you can also Google this and find out different ways to do it. Maybe one of these sounds good to you and you could just start there. It doesn't have to be a hard, complicated thing, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. And it's okay that if, maybe you want to reprogram your thoughts about yourself and maybe you still find yourself saying, I'm such a B, or I'm not good enough, or I fall short, or I'm not lovable. Whatever it is that still comes up, it's okay. Just keep reiterating the programming, right? Keep reiterating the empowered statement you want to ingrain inside yourself. Just keep doing it. It's a practice, and eventually it will become intuitive. Eventually it will become a part of you. You will believe it, you will live it, you will breathe it. And it's just a constant practice. And you do it with one thing, then you do it with another, then you do it with another. Before you know it, you'll be doing like 5 things, reprogramming your brain around it. I tell my friends all the time, well, my current practice is this. My current practice is that. Because I'm constantly reprogramming something within myself or my beliefs to expand my awareness, to expand my life experience, for me to experience as much as I can in this lifetime. And a lot of that has to do with me not limiting what's possible. I don't want to limit what's possible in this world. I want to be in awe. I want to be wowed. Because maybe I have a belief that certain things isn't possible, and that's why I don't witness it. But just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not possible. So, Spirit, show me how good it can get, baby. Show me how good it can get. Okay? And that's how I feel. But, so yeah, that's what I have for us. So that's what I have. This was all about how I reprogram my mind, my experience. We talked a little bit about programming and conditioning, which I use interchangeably, as well as ego, which I use interchangeably. We also talked about the subconscious mind and the strategies I use to help reprogram my mind. It always starts with awareness. I first need to be aware of what it is I want to change or what it is I want to implement. And so I go from what I want to change or what I want to implement into a strategy. I choose a strategy that will help me do that. And it's really that simple. And I continue that cycle. It doesn't stop. I continue that cycle, and I use my strategies as many times as I need to until it is programmed and grounded in me, that I'm living, breathing, experiencing it as if it's an automatic thing in my life. So the same way that we are younger and taught how to be is the same way we can reprogram ourselves as adults. And I feel like it could be a lifelong thing because, like, we aren't aware of every belief we have. We aren't consciously aware of it. A lot of times we don't become aware of some of these beliefs that we have adopted as younger people until it is triggered in a way because it's affecting the life we want to live, or it's inconveniencing us in some way. And that's how we notice, or, we just get this discomfort. It's somehow triggered, right? This idea that I'm being triggered, I started calling it being activated, right? Like, because it's coming to the surface of our awareness for us to even deal with it, say that, oh, all right, this is okay, I want to hold on to that belief, or I want to reprogram that this is actually more of the truth. And you do that, and it's really that simple. It really can be, sorry, it really can be that simple. But a lot of times it needs practice. And so the more you practice, the more I believe it may feel simple or easy or like a no-brainer or even like intuitive for you. So, it's a process. It's a process. And so I hope that you enjoy it wherever you are in your journey. I pray that this pours into you, that this supports you. I'm super excited to share this because I love the brain so much. And I do know how much my life has changed by taking more control over my conditioning and my programming and deciding who or what I will allow to program me and who or what I just am not open to. And so I choose my work that way. I choose where I go or where I don't go. I choose events that way, right? Is it energy that I want to be a part of? Is it energy that I want to open myself up to? And if it's not, then that's that. I'm intentional about that. And so, like, a lot of things are influencing us, and I think it's super important that we understand those processes so that we can make more intentional choices. And it may sound like work, but I'm telling you, once you get started, it becomes a part of your life. Like, it's literally, this is a part of my lifestyle, this is my way of being. So it's not work. If anything, it's just fun and interesting because I notice so much more. And I notice just how much it has changed my life and my experience and my relationships, and how much more I feel in control of myself, especially when it comes to like my ego and who I say I am. And now I know that like a lot of who I used to say I was had more to do with like habits that I had picked up in order to survive. And so now I get to actually live and thrive. And so like these habits I have now is more to allow me to live my best life and to enjoy my life and to have a loving life that really just feels aligned and correct for me. And it's an ongoing process. Like, I can't wait to share with you all what I'm doing. I mentioned the manifesting um, journey I'm on, but it's dealing so much with this it deals so much with the subconscious, which is so interesting because I have been asking spirit if there is something within me that, like a limiting belief or a limiting idea that is blocking me from really expanding in the different work I want to do. And so I do believe that there was a belief I had that I have created as my truth or rule for my world that I am subconsciously living by, and I didn't even know it. And so I think I know what it is now, and so I'm working through it and working with it in order to um, reprogram that belief into something more empowering and supportive for what it is I want to manifest. And so we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully I'll do a video soon talking about that and just like how that's going. But it's all mindset work. So much can happen when we just really recognize, the programming that's happening behind the scenes. And when it comes up to our awareness, knowing how to reprogram it if necessary or if we desire to. So thank you so much for this time in this space. I'm so grateful I got to do this and talk about this because I love this. I hope that this is helpful to you. And if you want me to talk more about something, maybe you would prefer I break up the video to focus more on something else. I think that this is, and I'm hoping this is a great foundational start and that I can just go from here. So I love y'all. I'm out of here. I feel so grateful. Have your best life. And I'm going to see you all real soon. Hey. Love ya. Take care of yourselves. Have a great life.